Hi everybody. Today we're going to be looking at section 3.5 and so this is looking at polynomials that take the form of x squared plus bx plus c, and basically what that means is there's just going to be an x squared term, a term with an x, and then a constant term of c. Okay, so building off of what we did today in class, we should look at this distributive property. Okay, so you probably remember you've done this before, where you have a term on the outside of the brackets, and if you multiply these together, you have to multiply the a by the first term as well as by the second term. When you do that, you get a multiplied by b plus a multiplied by c. Okay, so that's the distributive property. You should know that from back in grade 9. Now, if we're looking at it with two factors, okay, we have to make sure that each term in each factor gets multiplied by the other terms. So if you start with h, so we need to make sure that h is multiplied with the h in this factor as well as with the 5, and that the 11 is multiplied with the h as well as with this 5. When we do that, excuse me, we get h squared plus 5h plus 11h plus 55. Okay, this line here, that was when that line shouldn't be there. That's the cursor from the computer when I took the screenshot. So something that we can remember this by is FOIL. So you multiply the first terms together, so the h and the h, the outside terms, which are the h and the 5, the inside terms, which are the 11 and the h, and the last terms, which is the 11 and the 5. So we'll take a look at some examples here. For the first example, we're going to expand and simplify. So if we take our binomial, two binomials, or two factors, okay, we're going to make sure that the c is distributed through. So I'll draw some arrows here. So we're going to take this c and multiply it with that c, this 3 and multiply it there, and then we're going to get 3c multiplied, and then the last ones. Okay, and what that would look like is this. So we'd have c squared when we multiply c by c, plus 3c, minus 7c, which we get from minus 7 and c multiplying together, and then negative 21, which we get from multiplying 3 and negative 7. Okay, then we want to simplify that. So simplifying just means to combine like terms, and we notice that we get negative 4c minus 21. Now, if we simplify, or sorry, before we expand, what you should be able to remember or recognize is that pattern that we saw in class today. So notice that negative 4c we got from adding 3 and negative 7, okay? And negative 21 we got by multiplying negative 7 and 3. Okay, so you don't, if it asks you to expand, please show the expanding step, but the simplified version we get by adding these two and then multiplying them. Okay, so for example number 2, it would look like this. We'd end up with 9 multiplied by 5 to get 45, 9 multiplied by negative b to get negative 9b, negative 5b is by taking the last terms, or sorry, the outside terms, and negative b squared multiplied, sorry, negative b multiplied by negative b gives us positive b squared. It's important to carry through these negatives when we multiply, okay? And when we simplify, we end up with b squared minus 14b plus 45. Again, we always wanted to give it in the form with the squared term first, then our x term, then our constant. So again, we can see here, this time we multiplied 9 and negative 5, sorry, 9 and 5 to get 45, and then we added, sorry, let me re-explain that. We took negative 9 and negative 5 to get 45, and negative 9 minus 5 to get negative 14. Okay? So now we're going to look at factoring a trinomial. So what that means is that this time we're given the product, and now we want to factor it into the two binomials. Okay? So in order to do this, we're moving the opposite direction. So what we want to do is we want to figure out which two numbers add to this middle term and multiply to the last term. Okay, so we're going in the reverse direction. So we have to ask ourselves what two numbers add to 12 and multiply to 20. So if we take a look at x squared minus 8x, we need two numbers that add to negative 8, multiply to negative 7. So again, two numbers that multiply to 7, add to negative 8. Two numbers that multiply to negative 7 are negative 7. Sorry, two numbers that multiply to just positive 7 are negative 7 and negative 1. If we multiply those two together, we end up with 7. And if we add them together, we notice that we get 8. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to take one of these to act as a representative basically again, okay? So we take x and record a negative 7 because that's one factor, and then an x minus 1, and that's the other factor. So this is the factored form of this trinomial, okay? For example, b, we're going to rearrange the equation just so that we have the d squared term come first. We'll leave the negative 5d in the middle, and then we'll take this negative 24 and leave that as our last term. So this time, we're looking for two numbers that add to negative 5 and multiply to negative 24. So again, two numbers that multiply to negative 24 and add to negative 5. The two numbers that multiply to negative 24 are negative 8 and 3. If we add them together, we get negative 5. So our factors are 8 and 3. Negative 8 and 3, sorry. So we write down x minus 8 and x plus 3. Those are the two factors for this trinomial. Okay, and the last example just takes it a step further. So remember, when we factor, we always want to try and take out the greatest common factor. In this question, if you look, you'll notice that 5, 20, and 60 all have a common factor of negative 5. Okay, we're going to remove the negative 5, and we're left with negative 5 on the outside, then h squared minus 4h minus 12. We've removed the negative 5. Now, once we remove that negative 5, we're just going to kind of forget about it for the time being, and we're just going to focus on this trinomial here. Okay, so from that trinomial, we need to now ask ourselves that same question. Two numbers that add to negative 4 and multiply to negative 12. So two numbers that multiply to negative 12, add to negative 4. The two numbers are negative 6 and 2. Negative 6 and 2 multiply to negative 12. Negative 6 plus 2 add to negative 4. So now we're going to take these two factors and we're going to write them with our x's. So we take x minus 6 and x plus 2. However, remember we still have this negative 5 on the outside. We're going to keep that on the outside. Okay, and then we're going to write down our binomial factors after. Now, if you were to expand this, you should end up at this same trinomial that we started with. Okay, so that's about as complicated as it gets. Hopefully you were able to understand that. Just remember, the rule is that we're always looking for something to add to the middle term and multiply to the outside term. Okay, when we find those factors, we record each of those factors as a binomial with our x terms as well. Okay, so hopefully that was clear. Tomorrow will be a work period, so we'll get to have a lot of practice with this, and that's all that I have for you tonight.